So great to see everybody. Thank you. Big crowd all the way back in the rafters. So I'm so excited to be here with these two great, fun, thoughtful marketers. And I'd love to just start off, if you would tell us where you're from, where do you live, and why did you get into the line of work you're in?
Hi, I'm Lauren Jennings, originally from Ashburn, Virginia, right outside of DC. I live now in Manhattan, so living the dream. I always wanted to make it up here, and I did. I am one of the people that intentionally went to school for marketing and advertising, so didn't fall into it from a roundabout way, which I tend to find unique in discussing people's career paths. Very inspired by Mad Men. Reality on the media side is slightly different, but that was, I mean, truly, I was like, I want to be Don Draper.
Patrick Teske, Director of Global Media Operations at Diageo. I'm originally from a small town called East Jordan, Michigan, which if you're from Michigan, is top of the net. Living in Greenwich, Connecticut with the family now, though. And, similarly, I studied communication studies in school, so you know, it's kind of the natural thing to end up in media and marketing.
Well, I'm sure you are still basking in the glow of the big Michigan victory, so we'll let you do that for another 5 seconds or so. So you guys both started at agencies, right? What was the most valuable part of your agency experience?
The most valuable part for me would be the relationships I made. I think some of my lifelong real-life friends and work friends and colleagues, it is a small world that keeps going, so I think that was most valuable. I think it also teaches you hustle and grit, whether you want to do that or not. I have a lot of love for agency side. There's nothing like figuring it out when you're in the trenches. We've all, I'm sure, been there. But I think those relationships have been the most valuable.
Yeah, I think relationships are obviously a big key part, but I guess to just give a variant answer, I think beyond the agency side, you got to work on a lot of variety of clients. You got to understand how a lot of folks operate. I was fortunate enough to do digital media planning, then I did more of like buying, leading digital upfronts, and then I worked internally on the Kahn Media Group for a while. So I got to kind of get used to different types of clients and working different varieties of ways, and I think that kind of helped me as I moved over to the client side several years ago.
So looking back, and I know where we are today, but would you make the same choice to start your career at an agency if you were starting today?
I will say yes, if only because it is so much more complicated to understand the media and marketing environment. And I think without some of that hands-on experience, you do kind of miss a lot. It's not to say that you can't just start brand side and move up and really be an expert on the market. I just think you really get an understanding of how things operate from a media agency perspective. You have different relationships with the media suppliers, and you kind of just have a different view of everything. And it really kind of gives you a bit of empathy in those relationships, but also just understanding of how to operate and how to think a little bit differently, because I think client side we can tend to get a little bit insulated as well.
I second that. I think with actually just spoke to somebody the other day who's entering the industry, and was like, if I could pick for you, here's how it breaks down. You've got your brand side, your agency side, and then your sort of partner side. Let's start here, because I think you cut your teeth in agency side. I think what Patrick brought up earlier too, you might love a brand, you might be all in on one specific brand. We all know accounts come and go, so I think going to a brand side or going on one account is, you can do that, but you don't get the breadth of everything else there is. You don't get exposure. Like maybe I'm like, finance isn't my thing. It's not. I don't want to go work on bank XYZ account or brand side, but I might be exposed to something there and be introduced to something in the agency that if you go direct brand side to start, you might not figure that out, or it's a bit of a different move to go totally different industry. I think you get to have more experiences, more breadth of experiences when you start at a place that has multiple accounts and just multiple verticals in that.
I love that. and I'm sure the GroupM people do too. So let's shift to the job you're in now. And I will just, full disclosure, I went on ChatGPT and asked about the 5 best questions to ask brand-side media professionals. I will say you will know which are the AI-generated questions, which are my questions. It'll be pretty clear. So first, tell us about your day-to-day responsibilities.
Day-to-day responsibilities, it's a lot of emails. It's a lot of Teams chats. It's a lot of Teams calls. Sometimes a Google call when my technology never works. But truly, my day-to-day, I am in touch with my agency team, who is really an extension. We're a pretty small media COE at Luxottica. As for Luxottica, you actually know it even if you don't think you do. Is a very large global company. I specifically work on lens crafters, so that is my focal point. We have over 1,000 stores across North America, but we also own retailers like Pearl Vision, Target Optical, Sunglass Hut, and then our house brands like Ray-Ban, Persol, Oakley, Costa, Vogue. I'm forgetting a couple, I'm sure, and we license out for a lot of the designer brands. So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So daily basis, it is managing my media. I mean, it's perfecting the plan. How's the performance doing? That might not be an exact daily pulling a dashboard, but I'm in some dashboard every single day. I am looking at industry trends, whether, and that's not daily, but that's because we're planning and finalizing 2024, so that's definitely top of mind. I think it's honestly a lot of communication and just figuring out what's working, where are the results, what is our ELT teams upstairs worried about, how do I help media fix those problems. So I think that's, everyone says there's no true daily thing. The emails are pretty constant, so.
Good. You're busy.
Yeah, again, it's very true. There's no one daily thing, but within my role, global media operations, it's very broad. I mean, we have a media operations AOR with our agency, which is part of my day-to-day, which includes ad operations, brand safety, suitability, verification tools. How do we kind of standardize? We've done this standardization around minimal best practices, leveraging automation and technology to kind of help enable teams at a global level to get more work done and meet our position so that the markets can be more focused on what's relevant to them in terms of driving the business forward and thinking towards not just about what's the media best practice, but what's the right campaign to take to the market.
Excellent. So, Patrick, after 2+ years in this position of overseeing global media operations, how has that job changed, if at all, and how have the challenges you face changed?
Yeah, so I think in the last year, there's been a lot of change. It was kind of talked about a little bit earlier on the data front. But part of the reason we went to a global media operations structure was to have more control over our data. And I mean that in the broadest sense, but that includes media taxonomy, governance tools that we have in place, and ensuring that you have good quality data when you get to modeling. I mean, obviously for us, we're CPG, we're very focused on modeling. Outside the US, we do a little bit more direct to consumer, but generally it's about how do you have the right taxonomy, how do you set yourselves up for success. I think on the brand safety side, it's also an area as generative AI becomes more of a consideration outside of the industry, just in terms of like we're going into an election year that's going to affect some news that's out there. So from a media operations perspective, it's how do you work with the verification partners, have the right technology in place, and kind of mitigate risk within that space. So I think there's always a lot going on, and then you extend that over into it was kind of discussed earlier. Signal loss going into F24, is this actually the year that Vicky goes away? First party, second party data partnerships, more in terms of like insights and activation. There's a lot there that we need to kind of put your ear to the ground on and really work with our partners as they head.
I'm exhausted. So Laura, you've been in your job for about 6 months, so I don't imagine it's changed all that much.
I think we flip-flopped 10 years, but yeah.
So,
That's fine.
so I'm going to shift to a different question. In terms of strategy, what is your North Star in terms of managing and planning media for lens crafters?
So it is very performance driven. So my North Star is, it's actually nice because it's very black and white. It's plus 10% year on year, flat budget if you're lucky. So it is do more with less, and that is kind of our strategic go forward and do it. So how that translates into my day-to-day, my media planning, it is what channels are working, what is my allocation to those channels, what is my measurement of those channels. So we are full funnel, and if you show the results to, let's say, our leadership teams, like, great, search is working, put it all in search. You can't do that. So it's constantly explaining this balance of my cost per acquisition and my spend. I have to find that balance, because they'll say, I don't care, I just need more of that conversion metric. I just need more online eye exams. Right, but if I get them less expensive, we get more. So that at my North Star is absolutely how can I make sure that we're still filling the top of the funnel, still reaching the customers with a brand message that they're thinking of lens crafters first when they need their eyes checked, when they need new contacts, they need new glasses. It's how do we make sure we're doing that, but still fulfilling the need of getting people in to get the eye exam to then translate to purchase. So different than some of the other brands that we have in the portfolio, which get to focus more on some branding. So you'll see really big activations and partnerships. Not that Lens Crafters doesn't do that, but media, and this is, I think you mentioned it too when we're talking about agency versus brand side, our media COE, I'm focused on my goal. My goal is online eye exams. My e-com team's looking for revenue at lenscrafters.com. So then it becomes the side North Star is how do we make everything work so that everything, my CRM, my PR, my e-com, my visual merchandising, every spoke on this wheel of marketing is also helping me. I don't mind if I give some Halo purchases to e-com. They don't mind giving me some Halo online eye exam conversion. So that one for me, it's OEEs. It's where I live, online eye exams all day.
Yeah, the clarity is awesome.
I guess I'm lucky with that. Sometimes performance gets very, very strict, so you try to find ways to get creative with it. And if you've got your tried and true, there's only so many ways to run search and social and programmatic display. But there's other channels. There's online radio, there's audio, there's CTV, and the TV space is ever changing. So trying to keep pace with all of those. But at the end of the day, to have one true metric of success, I think it's been very clarifying for my career.
I'm just curious, the waterfall of productivity, what does that look like in terms of channels for you right now?
So I'm proud to say all of my channels are currently giving the same, relatively within $1 or $2, finally, the same, we say cost per CPOE, but your CPA metric. They all have different investment levels. I think as we go into next year in a changing climate for media, and there's always competition and seasonality factors that go in. In terms of the waterfall of productivity, I mean, my lower funnel gets the most budget, and within that, the channel cuts. You could probably make some assumptions. I don't want to overshare, but we are working really hard to fight for the dollars for our upper and mid funnel channels as well. They don't get as much because they don't. Currently, in the measurement that is changing every day, they don't show that CPA as clearly. So it's more about some of the other modeling that we do. We have the POEM model, which is like a extension on MMM models, but it's pay, don't, and earn. So that's part of how everything works together. So I can take learnings from that or from other real life dashboards that I have that are showing how every media is doing. So great, I might be running in CTV. I don't see a direct OEE from that necessarily, or a direct conversion to that in real time, but I know how it's working. It might take me a year to get all the data and run the whole model, but we have that information, and there's enough trust that we have with people that get the final sign-off in our plans that say, yes, I see the value in all of those. they'll still say, okay, I need you to reduce TV and put more money in your OEE drivers. But that's, I mean, so we find the balance. We fight for the balance.
I'm going to sort of pan out a little bit and thinking about the dynamic landscape of 21st century media. Challenges are inevitable. Can you highlight a significant challenge you or your company is currently facing and the solution or approach you implemented to overcome it? That was an AI-generated question. Patrick?
That sounds like a question AI wrote, so AI can answer the question in 2024. I think the big one, and this is just more broad from an industry perspective, is the discussion around signal loss and kind of the importance, like I go back 10 years ago when I was working on another CPG from an agency perspective. It's like first-party data wasn't a big thing 10 years ago. It's becoming more important now for CPG advertisers because it's all about consumer centricity and how do we kind of not just be brand focused and going out, and it kind of came up in some of the discussion earlier too about how do you engage your audiences. It's like we need to rethink what we're doing and how we engage with consumers and how we leverage data to do that better. So signal loss plays into that. I think there's a lot of opportunity from a first-party data perspective. Retail media partners have obviously exploded over the last couple of years. Second-party data partnerships get talked about a lot more. So I think there's going to be more building the bridge there, and how do you integrate with other partners from a data perspective. And it's not just about how do you go and activate that data, which is always the low-hanging fruit. I think everybody likes to talk about how do you activate data in biddable media. But there's also the aspect of what are we doing with it from an insights perspective. I was alluded to earlier. It's like when you can create some, in a future where we're able to create a bunch of creative assets in real time, what do you use to inform how you develop those creative assets? And there's kind of like the briefing aspect of it, and then the real-time nature of how you engage with audiences.
Yeah, it's the same. Dovetail, I'll give an example. I think one thing that LensCrafters is working on is getting our omni-channel strategies talking. So we're an international global company, even though all of our stores are based in North America, but our current situation is that our e-com data does not talk to my store data. So when we're going to a cookieless future, my first-party data is that much more important because the granularity of targeting is going away and everything's really contextual. So let me use what I have. Like, that data is gold. But if I don't have the best data, like, I'm only as good as the quality of my data, the volume of that data, the recency of that data. So it is in our pipeline. We are working on it, and there's a lot of teams involved. So not solved yet, but in the works.
It's a big challenge. So, quick look back before we jump into 2024 crystal balling. 2023, how does the year that's coming to a close compare to your expectations at this time a year ago as you were entering it?
We just came off a really strong Cyber Monday, Black Friday, Cyber Week. I forget what we're calling it now. So I think that's been really promising. We're also coming off really strong results. We had a really strong first half. We are kind of in this bated breath moment. So I'd say a year ago I would have been like, oh, maybe there's going to be a recession. Maybe we're still have some lingering COVID. Maybe there's another variant. Like, all of that was still very top of mind. We didn't know what was going to happen. Macro landscape. Obviously, there's been some amazing things. There's been some really not amazing things at a global level, and how does that trickle down and impact people's daily purchases, their healthcare acumen, and their desire to go into a LensCrafters store, for me specifically. So I would say I'm pleasantly surprised. We've been able to keep media efficiency where we need it to be. I think that's a testament to our agency and my teams just on making sure that we can achieve that. So we're meeting our goals. We got really smart. We're using all the data we possibly can and then some to make those decisions. So it's a little early, but I'm pleasantly surprised.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think if I went with expectations going into 2023 and coming out, like, again, you go back to the beginning of the year, every major call that was happening was about AI. I don't think it has exploded in terms of application to match the volume with which it's being discussed. And I think there's a long road to still go in terms of how it's leveraged. But I'm really excited about where we're headed in terms of AI application, in terms of analytics and insights. As an organization, a lot of our focus has been how do you get data organized better, going back to the taxonomy aspect, but even going beyond that, just in terms of business, how do you set yourselves up to think a little bit differently, and not use tools like that. I feel like it gets thrown out there in terms of automation, but it's more about like how do you get to outcomes faster. And I'm excited too in what I'm seeing in terms of kind of like the industry, ad tech partners, what they're bringing to market, from a biddable perspective, and ways that we can partner with our media agencies to kind of deliver on that a little bit further in 2024.
Excellent. All right, well, we're jumping into 2024. If anybody wants to ask questions, just get them ready, and we'll have a couple minutes at the end. So in terms of the outlook for 2024, Patrick, sounds like you are optimistic about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's going to come up. I get concerned about some things. I was having a conversation with my team yesterday, just in terms of we're going into an election year. So, yeah, election year, Gen AI, fake news risk. That means a lot of partnership with brand safety partners to ensure that the ad tech is accelerating at a rate that can compete with the risks that are going to hit the marketplace. So I have an eye towards that as something that we're going to have to be able to manage as marketers.
Pessimistic or optimistic for 2024?
I'll say also cautiously optimistic. I think that there's a lot happening throughout any of the South by Southwest buzzwords. They're still top of mind. I think, what I was saying earlier, there's not like net new media channels. If I'm wrong, someone please tell me, because I would love to have a new one. But there's not net new. So where the focus is the technology, and quite frankly, some of that technology is very complex. So we're talking about Web3 and NFTs and interoperability and I'm thinking of some other buzzwords. But then it's brand safety and the data privacy, and honestly, that is changing every day. So what you can, for us, what's HIPAA compliant or not changes. It changes by state, and that state list grows every day. So am I excluding 2 states this month? I'm excluding 5 states next month. We've got to stay on top of it. So cautiously optimistic. I think our work is cut out for us. But there's some fun stuff in there. It's a little overwhelming, but there's some cool stuff you can sink your teeth into. Kind of just got to pick a couple avenues and focus.
Yeah,
it's too overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it last week. Like, again, in a world where you're a little bit more direct response in terms of the metrics that you have, we're modeling focused. But there's also a lot of opportunity around proxy metrics, and like attention has been a big buzzword for a year and a half now. But like taking some of the changes in the ad tech landscape and some of the new metrics and kind of running that through the kind of lens of how do you build correlations so that you can have those, I call them bandy metrics that you can optimize towards in real time until you get to future measurement. I think we've gotten better about that over the last year, and that will kind of continue going into F24.
So another quick question, budgets, up or down in 2024 versus 2023? Lauren?
Happy to report we're flat.
There you go, the new up, okay.
We're mid-fiscal, so ask me in a moment.
Right. Okay. So what emerging trends in media, and we've already touched on a bunch of them, but in media and or marketing, do you anticipate will have a significant impact on your industry? How are you and your team preparing to leverage or navigate these trends? Who would like to jump in?
I think the one that's kind of interesting is, again, this is more of a CPG perspective, but the growth of retail media networks just adds this other avenue of inventory. And I think when, in a world that's so complex in terms of media media landscape and running in so many different spaces, generally advertisers like to have some degree of consolidation where you're writing your media, and now you add kind of new avenues to some of that. So not only are you running kind of outside frequency controls, you also lose a degree of control. And I was part of a conversation a couple of weeks ago that was a bit more eye-opening in terms of just like, there's a lot to be done, I think, from a retail media network perspective around measurement and consistency of that. We need more standardization around it. But also kind of figuring out how, like, what is the role of that for certain advertisers. In the US, we're heavily regulated, so it's a different conversation, but globally, in other markets where we operate differently, we have to kind of be able to manage against different nuance as these kind of different channels open up. Another piece that I kind of made me think about when you're like, I don't think there's a new channel, I don't know. One thing I'm personally interested to know over time is, do people also start switching subscriptions more over to like ad-supported streaming? Are we going to hit a point where people are kind of checking the pocketbook and saying, oh, maybe I don't need all of this access anymore? Someone who has like, I think I pay for like 10 services. So.
I second everything you've already said. 2024 trends and how we're approaching them. A big one for us is that we've got to tackle head-on measurement in the loss of identity. I think we're tackling that from a data collection CRM standpoint, from the omni-channel work that's being done to try to get all the information in one place. We don't have the answers, and that's I don't think if anyone else has answers, come talk to me too. But I think it's a little bit of trial by fire to a certain extent. Like, we can only mitigate and prepare for so much. I think a lot of that is having conversations with peers, having conversations with our agencies. We've been preparing for the cookie to go away for years, and I think some people are still fingers crossed that we get another year. But I think there's ways around that. It's not just that we're losing the targeting; it's that we're losing the measurement on the back end. So things like proxies or models, or there are plenty of tools out there that I think we've worked with that are amazing, that are not just your standard DCM. Here's your metrics. So excited to continue working with those. I think so. It's a little bit time will tell, but those are the 2024 challenges.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll open it up. Consumer behavior is ever changing. How do you foresee shifts in audience behavior influencing your media strategies and investments in the year ahead? And are there specific demographics or consumer preferences you'll be keeping a close eye on?
I don't think I have an immediate answer on it, but it kind of gets to the point on like the relevancy of growing first-party data and building new insights. Which is an area we'll continue to lean in on. I kind of mentioned it with like, interested to see, just as a person in media, how behavior will shift in the streaming environment. Like, will people go to ad-supported? That changes the dynamic. Obviously, we've seen some of the bigger players start to open up to ad-supported models. And when you're a reach-based advertiser, that means a lot because it's an opportunity to go after. So I think that's just, those are a couple of things that I'd be looking at.
We're lucky at LensCrafters. Our target audience, I joke all the time, is people with eyes. It is whether you wear contacts or glasses or don't, you guys should all be getting your eyes checked annually. That is my PSA announcement. Thank you for the TED Talk. But you should really, we're lucky because it is broad. We also have a lot of different messages that we promote: promo, designer, insurance, kids, blue light glasses. So there's a lot that we offer with that breadth of messaging and ability to message, and the fact that anybody can be in our core audience. We know that our audience skews older. We know that their media consumption skews a different way than Gen Z. But LensCrafters is not dissimilar to luxury brands. Wants to, how do you make sure that you're speaking to your, they call it the old guard, but you still come in and we're bringing in that new. That's the only way to stay sustainable. So we do look very holistically. It's a bit of a broader approach to our whole allocation, but the reason that we're in places like streaming audio, CTV, not just linear TV, and then we're also in the digital channels and on social and testing a new social channels, not just Meta, is for that exact reason, because it is broad, and we know that those are changing. So we're a broad one.
Excellent. All right. Anybody with a question for these two fantastic people? Yes?
Going into 2024, were there any lessons learned in 2023 that's going to feed into your initiatives or running initiatives for next year?
Lessons learned from 2023 that will help inform 2024.
One thing I'm excited actually for next year is our CRM approach. While it is, we're working on the quality and volume of that, it's very broad. So we already have tests in place for how can we find out a little bit more of the CRM that we're using, especially as we get a little higher level in some of the other targeting that we're doing based on best practices from our social channels, from like the likes of a Meta or a Google that say go broader, run every format, target everyone. Well, that might work, I'm not learning anything. So CRM is a good place for us to do that. We're finding out ways to build that in. Another thing that we learned, really I would say 22 and 23, was our scale within some of our channels was tapping out for whatever reason. So coming into new social channels, I know that sounds like an oxymoron because social is like limitless. But we're going to be testing in new channels partly because we want to reach younger demos, and not everybody's on a Meta platform. There are others out there, and there is unduplicated reach that we can find. So seeing how new channels work, and I'm excited to see how our creative translates into new channels too. So that'll be another test for us.
Yeah, and I think I'll go with more of an operational response, I guess. But we talked today about brand safety and suitability and the importance of that. But also being very proactive with your suppliers in terms of what are the category restrictions that they're operating under, so that you're not kind of artificially impacting your reach, and really scrutinizing what's going on, pushing the limits. You guys, again, your reach phase, going back to the audience piece, where we're generally LPA plus is our target at the end of the day. So it's all about reach. We don't want to artificially suppress that reach because of something that the tech was designed to do that maybe doesn't actually align with our standards or what we're trying to kind of accomplish as a business. So I think that's just an area that we really worked hard with our agency partners and our ad tech partners over the last year to kind of push further on.
Excellent. I think we're done. Is that?
Yeah, we're just at about time.
All right. Lauren, Patrick, thank you so much for this. Appreciate it.